Welcome to our latest episode of Breaking the Spell. And on today's episode, we have our trauma and somatic expert, Daphne Chua, who is going to talk about the relationship between the mind and the body and healing and trauma in society in general. So let me give you a brief introduction of Daphne Chua. So, a self-professed body-mind nerd. I love nerds. Daphne is always exploring the underlying principles of the human body-brain brain-body connection, as well as movement patterns as embodied relational beings. She applies principles of kinesiology, embodied anatomy and physiology through somatics, evidence-based research on the nervous system, trauma physiology, as well as traditional yoga philosophy into her work. She helps people hone their sensory awareness and embody the adage of a mind-body connection so as to fully experience life. Daphne has helped people of all ages rehabilitate injuries, regain neuromotor functions, manage chronic pain, and work through trauma. She also creates holistic therapeutic trainings and mentorship programs for individuals, movement teachers, fitness instructors, healthcare and corporate professionals. As a somatic therapist of various healing modalities, Daphne is trained in the art of traditional thigh yoga massage, biodynamic cranial sacral therapy, Chi Ne Sang, which is abdominal detox massage, Tai Chi massage, and Reiki, all of which she infuses into the alchemy of her integrated body work offerings and yoga therapy. So welcome, Daphne, to our show.
Yeah, welcome. Amazing. Oh, that sounds really amazing.
Thank you for having me. I wrote this bio like a few years ago. It's kind of, I have to cringe a little bit when I listen to it being spoken by someone else.
We can explore that somatically. Where does that come from? Why do we cringe when people sing our praises? So to kickstart our session, we always ask our guests one important question. Do you remember the first time in your life when you felt that things aren't the way they should be?
Yeah, I think I haven't remembered a time in my life where I felt that things are the way it should be. Yeah, I guess I came from a childhood that has some traumatic memories of a lot of fundamental physical moving houses and always kind of running away from things and hardships and quite a bit of suffering. So yeah, it's been living in me for a long time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if I want to maybe expand a little bit more into it, so then I kind of went through the traditional or the typical Singaporean pathway of going to school, going to university, get a corporate job, climb the corporate ladder, and that happened till 2008. And then the global financial crisis happened, and I decided to leave and go on a self-exploration journey, kind of like Eat, Pray, Love sojourn. Before Eat, Pray, Love was actually written, I think. And at a point of time where I had to make that decision of giving up everything that identified me here, my job, my house, my car, my career, my relationships, I think what drove me or propelled me to make that decision was really this sense of that this is not the life I want to lead. And through the years of exploring into something else and moving into something completely different from what I used to do, there was a lot of dissonance, a lot of cognitive dissonance. It's like, what the hell have I done? What can I do? Like, why did I do that? Why did I make this decision? It was hard because so I was so entrained in the. As much as I felt things were wrong, but the neural pathways were set in this Singapore society of conforming and chasing material needs and the need for status and money and comfort. Yeah.
And was there a specific workshop or modality or practice on this journey that sort of made everything click for you, that where you had an epiphany? It's like, okay, this is, what I want to be doing.
I wish there was, but no, it was actually really organic. When I left Singapore in 2008, I just knew that I had to get out. I knew that I didn't want to go back into my corporate life for a while. I didn't really know what I was going to do, who I was going to be, and how I was going to survive, like money-wise, income-wise. I had a bit of severance, a little bit of savings, and then I hooked up with an NGO in Cambodia and did some volunteer work. So after the stint ended, I didn't want to come back. And I was just kind of like, what can I do? What can I do that can keep me wanderlasting and finding something more meaningful to do in life for the rest, not for the rest of my life, but going forward, than to come back and be part of the system again. And then someone suggested, oh, you can be a teacher. Because teaching is universal. And so I didn't know what I was going to teach at that time. So I thought maybe I'll teach English. And then I've always been practicing yoga. I started practicing yoga since year 2000. So that's 22 years ago. And I always enjoyed the physicality of it. And at that time I just thought that, maybe I will go to India and explore the spiritual side of yoga and do some training. And so I went to India and did a yoga teacher training. And then being the kiasu Singaporean, I was like, what if teaching yoga doesn't work out? What else can I do? So I also did a Cambridge certification in teaching English to adults. And so I had 2 certifications to teach. Then I eventually found myself in Vietnam, in Saigon, and decided to settle there. And I started looking for work. So I thought that teaching English would be more a stable job or work that I could do. But surprisingly, actually unsurprisingly, because I'm not considered as a native speaker, so it was actually really hard to find an English teaching job. So, but then I somehow got offered yoga teaching jobs. And then it started from there. So for a while I was teaching both English and yoga, and was doing like 40-hour work week. And I was just like, I left the corporate life to do this. So it's like I have to make a choice. And so I gave up teaching English and focused on teaching yoga. And that led me into really down the rabbit hole of understanding my body medicine. And then I started doing a lot more private work, one-on-one work, in which I have to deal with more like intimate issues, and also understanding like the nervous system of how that's in flux all the time. And then that opened up another can of worms, so I started delving into studying different modalities and therapy work, and then the rest is history. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow, it's quite a journey.
Yeah. I came back in December 2019. So after being away for about 12 years, yeah, came back because my father passed away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. And then just in time for the pandemic.
And just in time for the pandemic, yes, exactly, yeah, and then spent 2.5 years grounded in Singapore. But also was the last 2.5 years also has been just such a difficult but very deep learning journey for me as well. Just coming back to where my roots are.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story so authentically and with vulnerability. And maybe you could, for the benefit of the viewers, teach us what somatic therapy is and explain a bit more about what a bottom-up approach to therapy looks like.
I don't think it's so much about teaching, but I can explain, and maybe as I'm talking about it, you can also kind of feel it, see what is arising for you. I think our modern society has evolved into, it's very much we think before we act. It's think and act before we even sense and feel. So that's that is a very binary system. So everything, it has to be organized into labels, boxes, what is known, what is for sure, what is certain. There are a lot of structures, systems, and this has guided us for eons, for a long, long time, in civilization. So that is considered a top-down approach, in which we use our brain, the frontal lobe, the executive functioning part of our cortical brain, to make decisions. And many times these decisions were made based on these labels and these boxes that we are taught to do and to be. Taught to do, mostly to do rather than to be. So a lot of doing comes from doing. The doing doesn't really kind of come from being. The somatic field calls upon us to listen first, to sense, to feel, and then allow the action to come from what is coming from within. So it comes from a different part of the brain. Yeah, it comes from we talked about it just before the session started. We talked about the altruistic part of the brain, the empathetic part of the brain, and of course the sensory part of the brain. So we're informed by like how am I feeling at this very moment to that drives the next thing that I decided to do, or rather the present thing that I'm going to be doing, and then allow the action to then be organized in the frontal lobe, in the executive functioning part of the brain, and to see that, what does that mean then, so for example, like our toes are very, very far away from our body. I see you sitting up now. It's like, right? And to go like, hey, do you know where your little toe is on your left foot? Most people will just like, it takes a while. There is kind of like this space before we can just connect to that part of our body. But the thing is that if we're embodied, if we are in our body, it should be instantaneous. It's like, I know exactly where I am. I can land and locate and orientate because I feel safe. I feel safe in my body. I know where I am. I know that I'm grounded and I'm supported. So the bottom-up approach allows that integration with the top-down, so that the doing comes from a sense of being. It's not just a conforming. It's not just because we have no choice, because society needs us to do this, because our belief system wants us to do it, because our expectations, other people's expectations of us is driving the decision. And I think like society has gone down this route a lot, because most of us are often having to do a lot of things we don't want to do. And I'm not saying that, that we should always just do the things we feel like doing, but I feel like in a way we have lost our authenticity and honesty, and also in a way our brain has become we're just using this part of the brain, the frontal lobe of our brain, and not really making use of the other parts of our brain to the fullest potential. And that can sometimes drive more division and separation amongst people and amongst the life forms. You talk about climate change, with also our relationship with our environment too. Like if you look at COVID, COVID is a zootopic disease. It came into civilization because we have been destroying the earth. But then how did we tackle COVID? We have more plastic, more the mask and the disposables and the sanitizers, and we're destroying the environment even more. But if we really, really kind of feel into it, like what happened? Like why did it happen? And how can we then help each other? Maybe the decisions that we make or the measures that have been taken might be less drastic and less fear-driven. So if a top-down approach often promotes fear and distrust, bottom-up approach that's integrated with a top-down approach tends to encourage more agency and trust and empathy. Yeah.
So, I think the key points I seem to be drawing from what you're saying is that a somatic approach really reinforces or nurtures connection and safety, which then, allows us to make, in a way, more integrated decisions, as a society.
And it informs, or rather it encourages critical thinking, encourages us to really question systems and question structures, which is very uncomfortable for most people, because we all like to be in a safety bubble, right? But that hence the conundrum: how can it be safe? How can we talk about safety when we are trying to deconstruct or decolonize systems, right? So it allows us to really just kind of go back into being connected with self, being connected with others, being connected with the environment in a relational way. To just see that everything is connected. Everything I do, every decision I make has an impact. There's the theory of relativity, right? Einstein talked about it. Yeah. So rather than just see ourselves as an island, okay, it's all for myself, or nationalism is just for my country, or just for my tribe, or just for my company, just for my family. We kind of just live in all these like separate bubbles and disregard our interconnectivity, and our relationships.
Yeah. Would I also be right in saying somatics is an approach which explores how there's a unity in the body, mind, spirit, emotions? Like we just don't see these as separate things.
Yes, we don't see. Yeah, exactly. Because if you look at how the universe, or even just planet Earth, for example, our planet functions in systems, right? So, and we are a part of it, right? So the planet has its ecology, and it's always trying to come back into balance. That's why, no matter how much we try to destroy it, it will still survive, Yeah, and our body too is always trying to come back into balance. It's our survival instinct is so strong, but then if we disregard our body in the sense that we see, like okay, that we're just a body carrying a brain. You know, the brain is just housed in the body. We're just this body that's carrying the brain, and the brain is the command center of everything that what we do. And we don't see our body, mind, like each part, each cell of our body has a mind. Then, I don't know, it's like how we have turned the whole planet into cities and agriculture, farms. It's like we're destroying biodiversity, and we're doing the same thing with our body, with medication and drugs, and over-exercising and overthinking, and yeah.
Wow. When you said sensing, feeling instead of thinking from the top down, I had flashbacks of moments in my past, and I was just sensing my body. Yeah, so like this part of my body here said, you disregarded me at that moment, you know, so you denied me of my feelings and my opinion. That part of my body came alive and said, you disregarded me and you denied me at that moment. So it's like I have Wi-Fi signals, connection to different parts of my body, and different parts are like, now the signal strength is slowly increasing as you're speaking, because the body is resonating to what you're saying. There's something there. She's saying something that is feeling right, and it's coming alive. You know, then the Wi-Fi signal. So this is what I'm feeling this somatically now, just as your words sweep upon my body. It's a transmission.
Wow, I wish I had that effect. I'm feeling some compression in my neck and upper back area as I'm sitting here. And
what can I suggest? Maybe you just turn your chair a little bit so you're not turning your head.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
There you go.
We should just give ongoing feedback on how we're feeling, and then you can give us guidance. This is perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So the thing is, most of the time, because we're so stuck in our heads, right? So we're so. I'm not saying that being cerebral is wrong, because I'm a very cerebral person. But we can get so stuck in the head that that's the being stuck in the head is often the cause of anxiety and depression. So mental health, it affects our mental health. But if we think that the body is just carrying the brain, if we look at our sensory pathway, is we feel, we do a lot of things with our hands. So we know where our hands are, because we're doing a lot of things with our hands. So the hands occupy a huge mind map in our brain, okay? And then our legs carry us to where we want to go. Is to locomote us. That's coming to your place. I have to climb those stairs. But can you imagine those in places whereby people don't walk, in which some places whereby even you go into a supermarket, they are on the mobility device, so you don't even connect to your legs. So, and where else that we have a lot of sensory neurons? Our mouth, for example, right? So because we're always looking for things to taste. The oral addiction is really, really strong. That is connected to our desires and our wants. The sensory faculties that is in this area of the body, it occupies a huge mind map. Then the hands and the legs, and then we're disconnected with the rest of it. So this whole part, this whole central trunk of the body, which is the core of the body, we're disconnected. We don't know what is happening in our gut. That's why we think that gut instinct or gut feeling is just it's just kind of woo-woo thing. Oh, my gut feels, my gut tells me, and we never believe it, but it is there, and I think we're going to talk about the polyvagal theory, right? So it is there, and there are sensory pathways that informs the brain of how we are actually feeling, of the inner climate. So we know the outer climate, like this is, we know that we're hot, or the environment is hot, but there is also an internal environment that we can tune into. And that is our sixth sense. And that sixth sense is so powerful in informing us of who we are and how we are and why we are. So if we are able to also create the mind map into the other parts of the body, into those areas that we disregard often. For example, the areas below our waist, our sexual organs, our gut, our heart and our lungs, and really tune into that. We only tune into sensations only when there's pain, only when there is a negative voice. Our nervous system is being built to look for danger. Our nervous system is always kind of looking for what is negative, what is wrong. So by the time that there is this voice that's telling you that, oh, I have discomfort, it's painful, I'm achy, or like or things are not right in my body already, we think that is the problem, but that is not the problem. It's come from something much deeper, much deeper seated than that. So, but we have not allowed ourselves the time and the space to tune into it. I'm not saying that everybody is like that, but it's just generally the pace of our society is like go, think, do. And that we only go with, so the sensory map is just the hands, the mouth, the eyes. In fact, the visual faculty occupies a huge mind map. We think that everything we see is true. So they say seeing is believing, and that's not true, because what the eyes see is only this dimension. The eyes we don't have eyes at the back, but we do have a vestibular system that informs us of like what is our relationship with gravity and space. Am I comfortable seated here? So before you felt the neck ache, I don't know how strong was the sensation before you actually talked about it, but you could have carried on the whole session without actually changing your position, right? You're just pushing through it.
Yeah, no, and I feel so much better now. So I'm glad I spoke up, and and actually, yeah, because every other Breaking the Spell episode, I've always just been turning, and it's such a simple adjustment. But yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought up the whole mind map thing, because something I've been really into the past couple of years is Feldenkrais, which I don't know if which is awareness through movement. And I just love it. I'm addicted to it. I almost do it every day, like these 40-minute sessions, and I'm just doing slow, repetitive movements, and it's just building up my mind map, right? I mean, some of the things are so subtle. It's like, imagine you can take a hold of one of your vertebrae and like kind of move it, and feel where that is, and you're just building up an image of your skeleton, and and the whole idea is like, the more aware you are of your body, the more effectively you can use it.
Feldenkrais is I'm quite familiar with Feldenkrais. It's an amazing modality. In fact, I started Somatics with Feldenkrais. And Feldenkrais often talks about the self-image. So and we talk about self-image often, it's just like, what we see in the mirror, right? So like how we see ourselves and how we want other people to see us, and it's very external. It's very externalized. In the Feldenkrais modality, the self-image is how do we see ourselves from the inside out. So creating the self-image through how do you map your body, for example? If you close your eyes and you feel what your shape and form is like, with the different, how does your skin feel like? The skin, the sensation on your skin on your forehead or on your cheek is going to be different from the sensation of your skin on the soles of your feet. So how often do we actually pay attention to that? And if we pay attention to that, it means that, hey, there are so many other choices that we are able to make, rather than just kind of keep going doing the same thing all the time. So awareness through movement in the Feldenkrais modality might be repetitive, but in each repetition, it asks you to notice new things so that we can create new circuitry, new neural circuitry. And the more circuitry we create, it's just like coming up to your house. We can go up the stairs, we can come from this way, we can come from that way. And if we have these choices, then we can life is better. Mm-hmm. Life is always better when we have choices, right? Yeah. But if we don't have choice, then you don't think that you have the choice, and you just have to turn your head. And then it creates discomfort and dis-ease.
Okay, so we've had to reset the camera because our equipment is also acting up, just like our bodies. But that's okay. We can be flexible and adjust. So yes, where were we? Feldenkrais, awareness through movement,
self-image.
There's a quote around that I love. I don't know exactly word for word, but it's something like slow down so that you can be aware of what your lack of imagination is doing. Because a lot of times we're just doing things without even thinking, right?
Yes, exactly. Just autopilot, just going the same pathway, same way, without thought. And that same pathway can be, this is, you create that disembodiment. And if we kind of look at the body system, repetitive stress, for example, if we keep doing the same thing, we just create repetitive stress, and so many people have back issues, neck pain, shoulder pain, frozen shoulder. So that's just from the musculoskeletal standpoint. But there's way more. Anything that is surfacing in the skeletal muscular system is also beneath that. We can also look at the organic systems, like in the organs. Most people who have a digestive or have some digestive issues generally have back pain, or some shoulder discomfort. If you have reflux, your neck is going to be tight. So we can in somatics we kind of delve into like these different systems, and look at the body as an ecosystem of systems, and within each system is also an ecosystem, and that the body is a microcosm, is a universe, and so on. And this microcosm is interacting and relating to the macrocosm. And this microcosm is also relating to your microcosm and your microcosm. And like just this interaction between the three of us, there is an energetic field as also a macrocosm within this, or a sub-macrocosm, right? And how I'm speaking and the way that you're asking questions or nodding your head and mirroring what I'm saying, I get the sense of validation. Okay, I think what I'm trying to say, and we can keep moving forward with the conversation and being present with each other and co-regulating our nervous system, creating a safe container for this conversation to happen. So that's kind of the presence that, or the value of awareness, I guess, of somatic awareness. Yeah.
Oh no, this is powerful for me. Like this entire conversation we've had, I've not been in the mind. I'm always sensing the body, and as the words come out, like I can feel a disembodied part in my heart that's saying, hey, you neglected me, come and connect back to me. Yeah, and then when I connect back to that is linked to somewhere like below in my, like what you said, right? The tummy, the organs, and the intestines.
Yeah.
And the bowel area, and like all of that is starting to like light up. Hey, I'm here as well. You neglected me, yes. So it's like I can see all this like pathways interconnecting. It's an ecosystem of a lot of different things, and it's all like bubbling with joy, or I don't know, connection. So from being disembodied and disconnected or numbed
Yeah.
Yeah, based on like my own previous history with mental health issues like anxiety or depression, to now becoming more embodied and more alive and
Awesome.
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's where we tap into our own inner reserves of healing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's so powerful. Yeah.
And that's the power of listening, right? I mean, oftentimes we're listening to respond. We're listening to reply. Yeah, it's just in the head. But if we're listening to understand, and we give space for the understanding to happen, to kind of seep into our body and feel it and sense it, and really kind of trying to be present and authentic with what we want to communicate. Sometimes I find words can be really limiting, but if we can connect more through the energetic container, then and through the co-regulation of our each of our nervous system, then the comprehension and the understanding is much more powerful and much more engaging.
Yeah. Although I have found words to be surprisingly effective if you use them differently, and this is something I've been exploring through nonviolent communication. So like one of the practices that I learned was just sensing into an area where you might have pain or discomfort, and usually we try and sort of avoid it or suppress it, or like I'll be like, right now I have a bit of tension or pain in my shoulder. And normally I'd be like, man, I wish that wasn't there, like kind of just go away. And then this practice is really about being very warm and empathetic towards it. It's like, shoulder, you've been trying to tell me something. I'm here. I'll listen to whatever you have to say to me, and just to be open to whatever, right? And I think I found that just having that internal dialogue with myself actually helps to move or soften the pain or diffuse it. And it's interesting. I mean, just being able to name something, that's all you need sometimes. Just to name it and leave it, and then things start moving.
And that's creating a relationship, right? So a big part of our suffering is because we identify with the pain. So we let the pain become us. It's like, I'm this person with pain. I'm this person with shoulder pain. I'm this person with this illness or this sickness or this stress. And then there is no relationship because you identify, you kind of merge with it, right? But if you, like you said, you get curious with it, you become curious with it, and there's a relationship with your shoulder. It's like, hey, shoulder, like, oh, this is interesting. Where did that come from? Is it because I've been turning my head too much? Is it because I'm clenching my jaw? Is it because there's tension behind my eyes? Can I soften? And that acceptance, recognition, that coming into relationship with it doesn't like de-identify you from the pain. It's just like, hey, something is going on. There's a message. The message is coming through, and you don't shoot the messenger, right? So then it's like, okay, so what's the message? And then the shift can happen, the reframing can happen. And I see that a lot. I mean, if you kind of look at it from a larger, more macro context, like, for example, we often personalize blame, for example. Like, even like the way we speak to children or our children, for example. If a child does something wrong, do you say that you have done something, like what your action is, you made a mistake, that you shouldn't have done that? Or do you say that you're a bad child? You get what I mean? So it's like you're a bad shoulder, like, or what is going on? What have you been doing, or what have I been doing? Or maybe it's the way that I'm sitting or holding myself. So and also like we kind of grow up in a way to believe that if we do in relationships, if we do something wrong, if we have done something wrong, that we are a bad person too. Like, so we lie about it, we deny it, or we find excuses, we become defensive about it. But, or if somebody were to say something and immediately we personalize it and go like, oh, this person thinks that I'm this such and such a person, and then discord happens. But if we can kind of come into relationship and just see it as it is in what is called the first order reality. So this is a glass of water and this is half full. This is first order reality. Second order reality will be like, oh, I don't like to drink from this cup, or the water doesn't taste good. So we let the judgment and the labels come in, and then it's filtered. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in nonviolent communication, like you were saying, I believe a lot of it is about coming into relationship. It's about just getting curious and, like you said, labeling things and not kind of like imposing like certain words or certain language as an identification
Mm-hmm.
of the person or the group. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, in nonviolent communication, there's definitely a discipline of trying to separate observations from interpretations. So instead of saying, "Oh, you were rude to me," the more neutral observation would be, I said something and you didn't quite respond to me at that moment.
Exactly.
And maybe what was going on in you that made that happen.
Yeah.
Whereas, oh, you were rude to me, that's an extra layer of interpretation. And that's where we often get into conflict. Whereas if we can stick to the layer of observations, there's more space to achieve common ground.
And it's the same with the body, right? It's just like, oh yes, I have a tingling sensation down my arm. It can be, or saying that, oh, this my annoying pain. I hate it. I wish it would go away. But it's like, oh, it's a tingling sensation down my arm. Oh, okay. What's going on? If I were to tilt my head a little bit and stretch it out, does it increase or decrease the sensation? Or, if I relax my breath a little bit, does it change anything? So you kind of get curious, and you really open your mind, like you open other parts of your brain to accept and to listen, and that's the true power of really listening. I mean, in a lot of physical activity we do, just say, oh, listen to your body. But what is truly listening to your body? I think we judge our body a lot rather than really listen to body. It's the same thing that we judge people all the time rather than really listening. So
Actually, I even read that even saying listening to the body prioritizes the head. It's like, who's doing the listening?
Who's
it's the
doing
head,
it? Exactly.
right? So it's more like
it's top
feeling
down.
the body.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be listening to the body. We should just be in our body.
Yeah. It's the sensing and feeling, and there's a difference between sensing and feeling actually. So maybe I'll just play a little game with you. What's the difference between sensing and feeling?
That's a really good question. I don't know.
From a somatic?
I'm kind of stumped. I was gonna say there's something about a location in a body. So one of them is maybe more specific, and then I feel sensation is the more underlying layer, and then feelings are built on top of that, like an interpretation of the sensation. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the sensations, the root word is sensing, and then feelings is like a whole bunch of things that I myself am struggling with. Yeah, but I've got like no clue about. Yeah, so this is something that I
So like frustration could be a feeling, but it wouldn't be a sensation, right? A sensation would be more like, okay, I sense that I'm tense here, my heart is beating, and whatever, and then the feeling of frustration is like, what does that mean?
I think frustration is a label. Yeah, frustration.
Not
is
a feeling.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, not from like in somatic languaging, if you kind of look at somatic vocabulary, it's like one is active and one is passive.
Okay.
So sensing is where is top down first. So our brain go to like sense your, maybe sense your right knee. Your brain goes the sensory motor cortex. Your brain is actually coming from the front. The front of the brain goes to look for that area of the body. So sense your right knee, feel what's there. Sense your right knee, feel what's there. So the active process, and then the bottom up, the pass, like you receive. So it's kind of like, if you look at a satellite dish, is the antenna that's going out, and then what is coming back. So it's going out from the front of the brain, and then it comes back through the back of the brain. Yeah, so it comes back through the brain stem. So it's a loop, it's a feedback loop. So sensing and feeling, sensing and feeling, right? So, but sometimes we are able to also, like being, embodiment is also so much that we don't have to go and look for information all the time, right? We try to kind of be in the moment. So we just receive, we become an open container to receive. Yeah, so that we don't have to go and always look for it, because it's tiring. And it's interesting because like when I work with people's bodies, and oftentimes a lot of disembodiment comes through kind of like you can tell like how long the person has been disembodied or how disembodied they are, in terms of like how much time it takes for them to actually be able to find that, to sense and feel like that, the feedback loop, how long it is, for example, a lot of people often repeats, and it's kind of like involuntary. It's like, okay, maybe move your right elbow slightly towards your right side. And I can tell you, so many people go like, move my right elbow to my right side, and that would be like, move. It would just like, I can see like the brain goes like tick 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 tick. The frontal lobe, the front of the brain.
That I'm one of those people.
And then okay, and then some people still can get it wrong. Yeah.
Where's my left? Where's my right? Like I don't even know where's left and where's right.
Yeah. And it's really quite astounding how disembodied most of us are, because we're just so stuck in like doing and just going with in that autopilot, like stuck in our phone, deadlines, stress.
Yeah, so I definitely resonate with that. Like in there was this Somatic nonviolent communication course that I took. It was online, and there was quite a number of Singaporeans, and I noticed a lot of people were struggling with identifying feelings in their body. Like if the question was, where do you feel that? They really struggle with that. And I didn't so much, because embodiment has been something I've been exploring for a while, and I think it really takes time and practice. But I was wondering if you have any quick tips on, if someone's really struggling with that, connecting to how they're feeling, like where can they start?
Start by creating an environment for first order reality, meaning that if you're talking immediately into like how what is that area of the body feeling, it's too wide. I mean, it's too broad. Like there is no. It's very hard if somebody is disembodied, a person who's disembodied, to just like, what are you talking about? It's fine. It's fine. Most people, it's fine. I'm okay. It's okay. And the interesting thing is also our stress response. When our stress response is high, there's a lot of adrenaline and endorphins. That's cortisol in the body, and these hormones numb sensations. So you actually feel less. Yeah. Adrenaline feel because it keeps you going. You have to keep going. You got to push through a discomfort. So adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones keeps you going. And I have worked with a lot of people who have they're like, oh, I have this injury, I have this pain, I had. But then if when I get them to really feel here, feel there, don't feel anything, it's okay, it's fine, yeah. So creating first order reality means that you kind of narrow the playing field a little bit. Take them to like baby pool first, rather than the deep end, right? So what I usually explore is, for example, to create a baseline. So you first connect to gravity. Like you can connect to gravity either standing or lying down or seated. Start to observe like differences. Like for example, between the right side and left side. So for let's do it right now. If you were to just maybe take a little bit more of a comfortable seat right now, okay, and then sense into which part of your pelvis is touching the chair. Yeah, just sense into that, okay, and then feel the difference between the right side of your pelvis and the left side of your pelvis. Feel which part is heavier and which part are you leaning into more.
So I definitely feel I'm more towards the front of my pelvis, and the right side is heavier on the chair.
Yeah. And that's the first order reality, because there's no judgment, there's no labels, there's no right or wrong or good or bad. It's just my right side of my pelvis is heavier rather than my left. Now, if I were to ask you to push your right foot down into the floor a little bit, and if you do that, maybe your chair, because that's a wheelie, so the chair starts to wheel a little bit, and then relax. Do that a few times. Push your right foot and relax. Push your right foot and relax. Okay, and notice if anything has changed. Maybe it's even more now. Do you feel like if there's a difference between what you were feeling before and what's after? Then try with your left side.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like the Feldenkrais.
It is, yeah.
Work.
It reminds me of Feldenkrais.
Yeah. If you push your left foot into the floor a little bit, and notice like if you push your left foot into the floor, and what kind of relationship does it create into the left side of your pelvis? And then you relax again, come back to baseline, and just notice maybe now the left side feels a little bit more grounded. So just kind of creating the baseline, look for change, look for shifts, and slowly get the brain to reframe and see things see sensations or sense and feel from through these more nuanced sensation, but without going to like, what are you feeling? Because feeling is a big scary playing field. So that's like the baby pool, and then maybe they'll say like, oh, actually there's a little bit of, whatever that's going on. Yeah, a little bit of tightness. Oh, I feel a little bit stiff on my back. Oh, this is actually going towards somewhere else. Then the dialogue can happen. So I don't know. Do you think?
Yeah. No, thank you. That helps. Yeah.
Another thing I remember us doing is we'll stand. Yeah, and then you'll ask like, are you standing? Is your weight more on your right or your left? So if it's on your right, then is it more on the heel or on the the front part of the foot, or is it on the left or on the right? So just like all these micro sensations, it's fascinating. There's a universe out there, and I've been in there. Yeah, there's a universe in there.
Yeah, like even like see when we're vertical to gravity, say we're sitting or we are standing, there is a certain tone that our body has to take, right? Because our skeletal muscular structure has to hold us in position. But then if we change the level, if we're lying down on the floor and we're horizontal, so logically we should be able to release that tone. But stress and the holding patterns, the habitual holding patterns in the body, sometimes forget because we're still holding it involuntarily, and we still feel like really off the floor, that we still, even though we have changed our position, but the body is still holding that tension. And by just kind of coming into relationship and noticing all these like little things, like differences between the right side, left side, sometimes I just ask people, do you feel like the floor is level? Is the floor level for you? And they're like, oh my god, yeah, I can feel that. I'm kind of like slanted to the side. So that's just how we kind of begin to tap into the somatic sensory system of the body as well, and that part of the brain. Yeah.
I mean, just for the benefit of the viewers, like holding patterns is a technical word, and the way I've applied it to myself is I still am holding on to some stress and tension here, and it's associated with fear. And in the past, I used to have a boss or a superior whose point of approach would always be from the left side, and then I would be always on a red alert and on a fight, flight, or freeze. And because I couldn't run away from him, I couldn't fight him because he was my boss, I would freeze or I would fawn. And then that is where the holding pattern started. And even though I've left the organization, it's still there. And just tuning in and understanding the holding pattern, and to reassure the body that, hey, you're safe right now. He's no longer approaching you from the left. And so you can chill a little by opening up your arms, because what I was trying to do was to protect myself like that. And I used to observe that I would always be doing this, just subconsciously. So all these were like protective mechanisms based on a holding pattern.
Absolutely. And also there's also some, I mean, holding patterns can also be developmental, from like, you know, the way that as a child, what did we do as a toddler, or even going back to like your birth trauma, for example, or even to the point of conception, you know, like the stress that your mom has to go through, or during the gestation period. And so our life begins and at the moment of conception, so because movement begins then. So we come into relationship with our mother is in relationship with herself and her environment, and then the process of birth, the process of gestation, the process of birth, and how then immediately the reality that comes through in the birth process. So we move from a fluid environment onto land, you know, onto gravity. You know, gravity is a big, huge force. When you're in the fluids, there's no gravity. You can just swim, and it's contained, and then there's gravity. And then suddenly we have to breathe ourselves, you know. Suddenly the lungs have to open up, and we have to do the breathing ourselves. We can no longer just breathe through our umbilical cord. So all these things create like a sense of like, are we safe? That need for safety, and that sense of safety, it begins as soon as movement begins, as soon as conception begins. And it's our biological imperative to want to be safe, to want to thrive, and to more than just survive. But then comes in the nervous system. The nervous system then is just like, okay, how do we be safe? So we gotta look for danger. So the nervous system starts to record patterns. And in instances of trauma, especially developmental trauma, so trauma, like what Santosh was saying, trauma happens when there is no choice, when we cannot fight and we cannot flight. There's no choice. When you still can mobilize and you can still try to run away or still try to fight it, there is still a choice. But when that choice is taken away from you, that's the traumatic experience. And in developmental trauma or complex trauma, it changes the brain. It damages the brain, and especially when the brain hasn't fully developed, if you're talking about a baby, for example, or a child, the sense of time and space is still not fully understood in the body. So when that happens, it's eternal. It's like because there's no sense of time. We don't know that a bad experience maybe it just is. When you have a sense of time, it's just like, okay, impermanence, right? Okay, it will end. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. And often we use that a lot. In every spirituality is about observing impermanence. But as in a tiny little body, if you're undeveloped brain, we don't know that. Our body doesn't know that, and that becomes the reality. And that is can create cellular imprints. The trauma pattern can become cellular imprints, and that's why we in the work of trauma and addiction, we definitely kind of look at what are the adverse childhood experiences as a major cornerstone in like how do we understand why certain people behave certain way or cannot get past certain things that has impeded them from living their life in a healthy manner.
Yeah, no, it was a big discovery for me recently when I connected this childhood experience I had of getting my wisdom teeth operated on, and I was put under general anesthetic, but somehow that miscalculated, so I was actually conscious when they began. So again, that's an exact situation where there was no escape.
Yeah.
And I think what my brain was forced to do is dissociate as a protective mechanism, and eventually I lost consciousness, right? But then, that explained to me how, like, throughout my life, I think I've always had a tendency to dissociate. So, like, even as a father with children, there'll be times when they're trying to engage me and I'm drifting off, like I'm going to my inner world.
Yeah.
So I was kind of linking those two things.
And even when, if you look at the instances of addiction, for example, like most addicts, let's not even talk about like drug addiction or this, just like cigarette addiction, for example, vaping addiction. It's often like they know it's bad. I know smoking is bad for me and I want to quit, and they try all kinds of ways to quit, right? But a lot of times they fail because the imprints the circuitry is so entrenched that it's hard to kind of move out of it. In toxic relationships, for example, a lot of people are stuck in toxic relationships. Why? Even though they know that it's toxic, they know that it's unhealthy, but the familiarity, because the nervous system is always looking for familiarity, because at least I know. At least,
the devil you know.
Yeah, there's the devil you know, the Stockholm syndrome, right? It's the devil you know. But then to change patterns, to kind of step out of that is so hard because that's uncharted territory. And the nervous system doesn't like unknowns. It doesn't like to go into the unknown, go into uncharted territory. And so no matter what, we really kind of work with that through reframing and through changing perspective and creating relationships.
No, I think this can be very powerful for like social justice work when we are doing things in the social arena, social work, social services. So let's say with underprivileged or marginalized communities, so there could be a lack of choice in terms of how people are reacting to life's stimulus and circumstances, and it's a lot about bringing that presence in to then see if there are alternative pathways. So like when you use the analogy of this house previously, like I will only have this habitual pattern of coming in through the door and going up to the stairs, but for once I can now try to look left and go left. It's uncharted, unfamiliar territory, but at least try that. And so we increase the range of choice for people. Because if our habitual patterns are like victim consciousness or guilt consciousness, getting out of that is, it's a lot about creating new pathways of choice from within.
And I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I have to do this because I have no choice." No choice what? I got to do my job what? I got no choice. I got to do this. I got no choice because it's like I feel like when we say I got no choice, immediately we set ourselves into trauma bonding and trauma, and disassociation. Like I got no choice, so I'm doing it, but I don't want to feel it. I'm just gonna numb myself out and do it. And I think that's actually different from true grit and resilience. Yeah.
Yeah, my version of grit and resilience growing up was bulldoze your way through, whip yourself,
Self-flagellance.
Self-flagellation. Then there's always this like thing we used to hear, mind over matter, mind over body. You can do it. You can push yourself a bit more. Yeah, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Like those are like the narratives in my mind that cause me to increasingly and cumulatively over life's events to just numb everything and to move forward. Just yeah.
But,
So
and we can do that. I mean, like we can do that, and we are built to do that. And I feel like the fact that we are born as human, gives us the a little bit more of that sense of control, because we are higher up in the evolutionary food chain, but to also see the sustainability of that, right? The problem is when we really start to believe that we can control everything in our life, and disassociate with what are the bigger forces, and disassociate with the bigger forces of Mother Nature, of interconnectivity, and we then go we forget that we are a part of the whole, and that's when we start to create those imprints, those trauma imprints, because we can push ourselves a lot through very, I mean, like historically, look at what we have achieved as the human species, right? So, but I think we have lost our way in trying to outwit nature. We forget that every part of our being is magic. There is how did we come about? How did it come about? Why are our lungs built like trees? Why are there fractal patterns? Why is there sacred geometry? Like why? If we can control that, then why don't we have answers?
Yeah, I think these are all beautiful questions. I actually would love to talk about polyvagal theory a little bit, because it's something I'm, really fascinated by. I mean, especially how we can influence each other's nervous systems just through facial expressions. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
An abridged version of it.
Yeah.
So polyvagal theory is it came from Dr. Stephen Porges, who's a scholar, neuroscientist, and he really connected the dots of the mind-body physiology, and he came up with the polyvagal framework in which that you understand evolution. So the evolution of life forms and the evolution of nervous system that follows the phylogenetic pathways. So the first, if we're looking at life forms that have a nervous system, the invertebrates, for example, and then in the water, and then to land, which starts from the reptile. So the reptile brain, the reptilian brain is really it's the most primitive. I think it starts maybe 500 million years ago, and its core function, its sole purpose is to survive. Yeah. So in order to survive, it will do anything, but because its only purpose is to survive. It doesn't see itself as having the choice of connection or to bond, to defend. It's very individual. It's just to survive. So the freeze response then came from there, and the freeze response, I see it as, like, from the work that I do, I feel like the freeze response has also two sides of it. There's the freeze, like the deer in the headlights freeze response, or there is the collapse freeze response. So the polyvagal theory, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. Why is it called the polyvagal? Because it came from this cranial nerve number 10, and it's called the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve starts in the brainstem, and instead of moving through the central nervous system, which is through the spinal cord, it starts to innervate into the organs itself. So into the facial organs, so like eyes, ears, the inner ears, the mouth, the larynx, and then moving into the vital organs, which is the heart and the lungs. And then they call it the supradiaphragmatic organs, which is above the diaphragm, so heart and lungs are above the diaphragm. And then below the diaphragm, the subdiaphragmatic organs, which are our gut, our kidneys, gut, kidneys, pancreas, spleen, where else? Liver, sexual organs. So because it bypasses the spinal cord, and then it's called the vagus nerve because vagus means wandering. So it wanders it innervates into the organs, and then it ends in the sacrum, which is right at the base of the spine. So what is so special about the vagus nerve is that it's not the connection of the vagus nerve complex is 80% from body to brain, rather than brain to body. Whereas the central nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system is brain through the peripheral nervous system to control the body, so it's brain to body. But vagus nerve is body to brain, which means that the body actually plays a very, very large role in regulating our systems, all the systems that's happening through the organs to come back into balance. It tells the brain what it is feeling. It tells the brain what it is doing, and so creates that feedback loop that is bottom up rather than top down. And the supradiaphragmatic connection is high in the evolution of mammalians, whereas the subdiaphragmatic is the reptilian response of just surviving. But then what's in between is the mobilization aspect of it. So the mobilization, activation, the doing part of how we are moving through life, and that's the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is about doing, so it goes through the spinal cord. It's more top down. It's more like, okay, when do we start to activate? And traditionally, the nervous system is kind of being put into two branches: sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is about fight or flight, and parasympathetic is rest and digest. Again, it's a very binary way of kind of describing the nervous system, which is actually too simplistic and quite obsolete. Because we need the sympathetic nervous system as mammals, because we need to fulfill our roles. You need to wake up in the morning. You need to go and get a glass of water. You need to fulfill your duty as a father, as an employee, as I don't know what other roles, as a friend. You need to go and you need to set up these this interview. So sympathetic nervous system allow us to perform tasks, is to do. So it goes through the central nervous system. It tells us to, okay, move this, take this chair, look at the battery pack if they're still full, tell us when it's no longer full. So this all goes through the sympathetic nervous system of activation and mobilization. So the polyvagal theory then looks at what is the arousal level, how stimulated you are. The higher the arousal, the more stress that you are experiencing in your body. And then when it reaches a certain threshold of stress, the body goes into a sense of like, I don't feel safe anymore, right? So then the fight-flight then happens. So when the fight-flight happens, what then goes on physiologically, is like the heart rate increases, the blood pressure increases, your mouth becomes dry, your pupils are dilated, because you think that you have a tiger chasing you, or either you have to run from or to fight with. And then as arousal increases even more over time, in which that you feel that you don't have a choice anymore. You cannot run and you cannot hide. Then you can only freeze. You go back into that very, very primitive response of like, I just want to survive. So I disassociate. And that's the trauma response. I disassociate. Either I'm like, freeze, I'm not here. So I'm not here, which means that our breath becomes very shallow. Our body goes into this free state of holding and bracing and immobilization. And because this is not sustainable over a long run, so if there's continuous arousal over an extended period of time, we will collapse, because it's not sustainable to always brace. And then in the collapse part of the nervous system complex is called the dorsal vagal complex. Then the body starts to shut down because it's going into hibernation mode. So the lack of it completely shut down through facial expression. So there's you cannot no longer co-regulate through the nodding of the head, the tilting of the head, the blinking of the eye, the smile maybe, or the acknowledgement, the facial, the mirroring of the neurons. But what we want to do as a human species is to always co-regulate. We're always looking to connect. When we connect, we feel this sense of safety. And then it goes into this part of the vagal complex, which is called the ventral vagal complex, that is above the diaphragm. So the heart rate goes down, the lungs are able to, the breath opens up more, the mouth is not dry, because I'm breathing well, the digestive juices are flowing. Then the ears, the inner ears, or I think it's the middle ear starts to open up more, so we can catch nuances and we can listen to understand rather than listen to respond. We have eye contact, and this perceived sense of safety then creates this environment or container of presence and curiosity and mindfulness. So it's not so much as, when we look at the polyvagal theory, it's not so much as like, we can only be in ventral vagal. We have to recognize that as a living being, that we go through all these states of change. But the key is, what is the baseline? Can we come back to the baseline of ventral vagal? Can we come back to the baseline of safety and connection? So for example, you can be watching a horror movie, right? And you're actually going through the stress of going through that horror, right? But you know that you're safe. You're at comfort of your sofa, you got aircon, got a cup of tea, you know that you're safe. And when you know that you're safe, you can go through these flux. So when we are supported by community, when we're supported by our family, when we're supported by self-resourcing, we can go out and fight the tiger. We can go out and face the world. So how is our body kind of always sensing, forward scanning below our consciousness, the sense of safety that's within. We look for safety cues that's inside the body, so through the vagus nerve informing the brain of how we feel. Outside of the body in the environment, we look for cues of safety as well. Is it noisy? Is that people lurking that you feel uncomfortable with, or are there like real threats going on? And we also look for what's going on in between, the communication of what's inside and outside, and in the between nervous systems. So that's kind of the homeostasis, our biological imperative to always wanting to come into balance, always coming back, wanting to thrive. Whereas when we don't have that, then it's just looking to survive, always looking to fight, always looking to run. Yeah.
Wow, okay, thank you.
It's a very super abridged version.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think the book on it is like that big, so and it's quite technical.
Very technical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering like for someone, because earlier you were talking about, let's say, people who are oppressed or in just challenging situations, who are struggling, they don't have much time, they don't even have much capacity to maybe even understand this stuff in this detail. Is this something that can help them? Like what is, I mean, I feel, polyvagal theory is quite revolutionary, because like some of the few practices that I came across were just so simple. Like in order to just reduce my activation level and give myself a warm sense of safety, like, all I had to do is like look around, look behind my back, make sure there's no danger, like focus on, things that are interesting to me and linger on it, and then just do that for 30 seconds and I can feel myself calmer, right? So I'm thinking, even for someone not knowing any of this theory, like to be able to teach these practices to people who are in very challenged situations so that they can just be calmer, I think is like, I don't know, there's so much potential there.
Yes, absolutely. I feel that it's really important for like to teach these just even like the basics of how do we track our own nervous system to like schools, because a lot of children are very dysregulated, to caregivers, healthcare workers definitely, and also in corporate environment, because there's so many triggers, especially now that a lot of work has been moved online, and there's so little like mirroring now, because the physical presence plays a huge role in co-regulation and moving things online, which is great, but at the same time there's so many aspects of connection that are lost. And the thing is that it doesn't really take that much to learn a little bit about it, even just like a little basic framework of how to self-regulate and how to co-regulate and look for safety. I call them, there are certain words, certain terms, somatic terms that I use. I call them deceptions. So for example, and this is just basically to switch from like top down into bottom up. And the moment we can allow that bottom up process to happen, the body is like, okay, I'm safe, I'm fine, right? So we play with interoception. So like what you were saying, how do you feel in the different parts of your body? But if that doesn't work, we can start with exteroception first. So interoception is what's inside, exteroception is what's outside, right? Like what you were trying to say. So using our faculties, like the sense of vision, look for cues of safety, like our hearing, our auditory sense, to like kind of, for example, now Like, okay, you know that it's getting into rush hour because there's more, you can hear more of the traffic. And then you can hear like maybe the hum of the aircon or the hum of the lights, the electronic that's going on. It brings you back into the present moment, or like going to that sense of smell, it's like, okay, maybe a little fragrance, or maybe maybe a bit sweaty, but then you go like, hey, this is, I'm back at the present moment. So playing with these senses and proprioception, okay, just take a moment to feel where your feet are, go reconnect back into your body. Do kinesthetic awareness, just move your head side to side, cross the hemisphere of your brain. Every time we cross the midline, we cross hemisphere. Take your right arm to your left hip, you're crossing hemisphere. And these things all help to create that sense of safety container, because it allows the bottom-up process. It helps to tone the vagus nerve. It helps to create that bottom-up process, allow the vagus nerve, hey, 80% of the nerve complex goes back to the brain. I can tell the brain that I'm safe. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Oh, it's fascinating. For me, it's like connection to nature, like grounding with the soil of nature, and
sensory connection. Yeah.
Exposing myself to the elements of the sky. The sky is so expansive.
Yeah.
It feels so safe just looking at the sky.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then like some things I do are like things like this, and giving myself a gentle hug. Touch. Even some like small breath work, like the Ujjayi breath or the victory breath, which supposedly acts on the vagus nerve. Yeah, so that slows down the breathing and it makes it deeper and more in the belly. Yeah, with a smile on the face. Yeah, so all of those things. Yeah, these are like practices that we can.
There are a lot of tools out there, and it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard. You just forget.
So I think we're almost at time.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
There are just so many things. Like I think I'll just end. There's this beautiful quote that I gathered from one of your workshops online, and it's a wonderful quote by Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. Yeah, and so what she said in the experiential anatomy of body mind centering, the mind is like the wind, and the body is like the sand. If you want to know how the wind is blowing, you can look at the sand.
Yeah, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen is the founder of Body Mind Centering, and huge influence and inspiration for the work I do. So I always want to honor her work and her wisdom. Yeah. Yeah,
I know. I love that quote.
Yeah.
It's like, the body is, where spirit moves through the body.
Yeah. It's the vessel that we move through life and experience life. You cannot deny it.
Anyway, thank you so much. This was a really wonderful conversation. Embodiment has been a big theme for me, so I always, I was looking forward to having a whole conversation around the body, and this is probably like one of the more sort of relaxed conversations because, we've been being given permission to move around and whatever. So
you mean before that you weren't? Oh, because it's on Zoom.
No. But even in person, like just the nature of the topic, we don't talk about the body as much, right? It's like we're just more on the head. So this has been a great experience.
I think with our future guests, we can try crossing hemispheres.
Yes, exactly.
Like we can do this kind of exercises.
We'll probably
model it to our
freak
viewers.
out our guests. We'll force them to watch this episode first.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
much
for having me.